Hello. I thought I'll give a little introduction, maybe a little taste of what I call as being in touch with the Great Mother and Great Father. This is a video which has been long time due, and I was thinking of what would be the right way of saying this, what would be the right words with which to speak about something which a lot of people may have heard about in several contexts, may have even thought about, may have even wished for there being something like this, and several people who know about this are not talking about it. So I think the Bible in some way refers to it as the Great Mother and Great Father. There are shamanic practices. There is in the philosophy of shamanism that they talk about the Great Mother, the Great Grandmother, the Great Father, the Great Grandfather, in terms of domains, realms of experience, which may be called like the feeling of a mother, the feeling of a father, or the feeling of a grandmother or grandfather. Now, in fact, there are these people whom we call as mother, father, and then grandmother, grandfather, and then there is the feeling of a mother and a father, motherliness, fatherliness, grandmotherliness, grandfatherliness. There are some people who exude that kind of a warmth, that kind of a presence, though they may not be mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, or any of those ancestral actual figures, but they exude a kind of warmth, they exude a kind of presence. And in their vicinity, we experience a kind of love which may be something that we would expect to experience from these people like the mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, or these warm, old, loving forms. Now, in our own body, it is possible to experience this, and in fact, this is where we need to first begin to get in touch with ourselves, our mothers, our fathers, our grandfathers. And this is where the beginning of home begins, where the experience of being at home begins. So let me begin with a connection with what I call as the motherly sense. And this is there for anybody to experience, no matter who is living in which part of the world, in the presence of whom. This is there to connect with, to remember home, to remember family, to remember warmth, to remember love. This can also be related to a sense of being in touch with the feminine, but I have been trying to avoid this term, masculine and feminine, because then there are gender-based thinking, and what it means to be a male, what it means to be a female, and all of those things come into the thought realm. But what I refer to here is, okay, let me not go there. Let me just stay with this sense of a mother and a father, because then people are more able to tend to relate more with the sense of mother and father than with the sense of the feminine and the masculine. Because in some way, I think gender-based things comes from somewhere. In some way, I think people don't quite associate mother and father with masculine and feminine than with a sense of a loving form, mother and father, than with the gender masculine and feminine, which the mother and father also actually are representative of that, but we tend to not think of them as sexual beings and more as related loving forms some way. I think as a society, we may still be at a little bit of odds about sexuality, about gender, and more okay with the loving forms of it. So I've just touched upon a certain gray shade in our experience of living about relationships, particularly in relation to the sense of gender. But that's a more deeper conversation. That's a more deeper experience, which has several other turbulences: emotional, psychological, intellectual, spiritual connotations. So let me just veer slightly away from there and come to the topic of you experiencing the mother and the father. Now, the motherly feeling and the fatherly feeling may be in some way considered as two worlds in themselves. Kind of like the yin and yang. We need both the mother and the father, but they both have different nurturing energies. Now, in our body, every time I get in touch with the sense of warmth, with the sense of softness of my body, and with any sense of a rhythmic, gentle movement in my body, a rhythmic, gentle movement, I get in touch with the sense of the mother and a gentle, it's a lullaby kind of a soothing, regularly paced movement, like the heartbeat. You get in touch with the jugular. You just keep your hand in the region of your throat and feel the jugulars, where you can feel the pulse, where where the pulse is a reflection of the pulse of the heart. You can feel a certain steadiness, a certain strength of life. Anytime you're feeling anxious, anytime you're feeling disturbed, just place your hand in the region of your throat and feel the steadiness of your pulse, and you would feel the affirmation of life. And Jaan hai to Jahan hai. Yeah? Where there is life, new possibilities are always available. The strength of life is always available. Get in touch with that anytime you feel any kind of anxiousness. You can also feel this pulse without having to keep your hand and feel the pulse with your hand. You can get in touch with your heartbeat, with the pulse in your body, which is pretty steady and constant. If you're not anxious, still there's a certain steadiness. The health of your life depends on the steadiness and evenness of the pulse in your body. If you're feeling anxious, kind of fearful, and all those kind of emotions, you're likely to have your pulse pacing up. Yeah, and yet there will be a steadiness to it. You can feel this pulse. The more you're feeling the steadiness of this pulse without having to keep your hand somewhere or feel it, you're more in touch with the sense of a motherly lullaby in your own body, in the sense of the warmth. You get in touch with the warmth, get in touch with the softness of your body, and get in touch with this rhythmic pulse through your body. You're more in touch with the motherly feeling in your own body, and you're home, all is well. And the more you're able to touch the tissues and feel a certain strength, a certain constancy, a certain assurance in the structure of your body. There is tissues, there is bones, there's muscles, and they're all organized like the construction of a house. There is the basic mesh wiring, on top of which they put some cement encasing so that the structure of the house is more firm, and then they put more layers and there's bricks and etc. and so many other things, and then they put cement casing in. They make it more and more firmer. Similarly, a body has a bone structure, and then over it are many other layers, so that forms a structure. So when you find comfort in the structure of your body, you're in touch with the Father. Stop now. Yeah, I hope you have more to think about.